And it is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, but experts say as many as half of Canadians currently living with dementia have never received a formal diagnosis, putting them at risk of not receiving essential treatments and services. Dr. Saskia Sivananthan, a professor of family medicine and former chief researcher and KTE officer with the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, is joining us live now with more. Dr. Sivananthan, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll start off with that stat, because that is quite disturbing. Why is it that so many people go undiagnosed formally?
Well, there are a whole bunch of reasons for why people don't go in to get a diagnosis or why their physicians might not give them that diagnosis. One of the really important things is stigma. It's fear. People are afraid of getting that diagnosis of dementia and what it means for their future. And so they might not come forward for it. But also, dementia is difficult to diagnose. It's not an easy disease. And maybe I should step back a minute here because dementia is really an umbrella term for multiple diseases that all share this common trait of memory loss. So, Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, but there are over 100 others. And it's not always easy to diagnose dementia. We don't have, good diagnostic tests. So right now we're only using memory tests as the primary way to do it. And so because of that, people don't go in to get that diagnosis. They feel like there's not a lot of hope for them, and when really there is.
There is, and as much as there is not a cure for it, so you want people to come in so that they can get the treatment that is needed. Now, we are, of course, watching this silver tsunami, as they say, heading our way. We're seeing more and more elderly people, especially, going missing here throughout the GTA. If everyone were to come in and get that diagnosis, do we have the resources here in the province to properly treat people and the research that needs to be done to hopefully cure it one day?
It's such a great question. And I think the short answer is no. We don't do a good job of supporting people who currently are diagnosed with dementia. And also keeping in mind that when a person is diagnosed with dementia, it impacts not just them, it impacts their families and their caregivers, who all then start needing to use the health system. And because we don't support them well right now, this has been the reason why we released that report last year from the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. We need to do a better job of supporting the future Canadians because right now there are about 700,000 Canadians. The projected number is over a million in the next 30 years, plus at least another million caregivers who will be supporting them. We don't have great diagnostics. We don't have cures. We don't have good treatments. However, there have been a lot of new developments in research in particular that will be moving that needle forward. But if you're not diagnosed, you can't access those things.
That's right. Here in Canada, the government has put together a strategy, the National Dementia Strategy. It was released in 2019, but where has it gone since then?
So the strategy is a 5-year strategy, and it's set to expire in 2024. Now, technically, the National Dementia Strategy is enshrined in law. However, once the strategy ends, the current one, which, by the way, is really well written, it has all of the key pillars for support, thinking about risk reduction and taking a preventative approach to dementia. As well, Canada really focused on the human rights of people living with dementia. These were all important aspects of the strategy. But after 2024, if the strategy no longer receives further funding, it got a one-time kickstart of 50 million when the strategy was released, but that doesn't go very far, especially when you consider research as it relates to dementia. If there's not further investment in the area, as well as more investment in training the family physicians who are that first entry point where people come in to get that diagnosis, people will continue to not receive the supports and care, which ultimately places a huge strain not just on the health system, but places a strain on caregivers who are providing this care without being paid.
All right. And lastly, as we wrap up, what would you say to someone who is afraid, or, the loved one of someone who is avoiding getting tested and getting that official diagnosis?
I'd say I understand. I understand that fear. And there are other diseases which have been similar. But I would say that the earlier that you get a diagnosis, the better, because you can access supports and put supports in place for what you want moving forward. As well, there are treatments and diagnostics that are coming down the pipeline. And in order to be able to access them or to even participate in those trials, you need a formal diagnosis. And lastly, I'd say hiding that stigma and fear is one of the worst ways in which you're not really, in the end, dealing with the disease and having those hard but important conversations with your loved ones. There is support. Please go forward, speak to your family physician. And the last piece is that some dementias are reversible or can mimic dementia, and it's really something else. So please go in and speak to your physician.
Okay, Dr. Saskia Sivananthan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.